said, like, yes, this will be recorded. Welcome, everyone. Happy Friday, last Friday of September, and super excited to be sharing some tips and tricks. The last time that we did our kickoff, one of the biggest items, we'll call it that, one of the biggest choices that was voted on was best practices. So we wanted to kind of just share tips, tricks, anything and everything in between. This is being recorded. It will only be posted to our event itself as well as the WUG's YouTube. But if anyone has an issue with that, completely understand. Feel free to drop off and then you can watch the recording as it comes. You met me and Jody last time, but for anyone that wasn't there or just needs a refresher because June was forever ago, I'm Monique. I am our creative ops manager at Stanley Black and Decker. Oh, thank you, Kirsten. I forgot that I asked the emoji question, but yeah, if you want to drop in the chat just the emojis to describe your week, and I feel like we've all been kind of going through it as we're going through this, please do. And then my co-lead is Jody, who you'll hear from a little bit later, and she's a project manager at Unum. So today, dealing with all of the themes of magic. I'm also wearing my Making Workfront Magic t-shirt because I forgot that I owned it and was like, this is perfect. But today we're going to be talking about tips, tricks, the magic of it all, whether you are a um, new user that has never done it before, you've been in Workfront since ATAS, I'm sure there's something that either you haven't learned or want to learn, or maybe you want to share. So today's agenda, pretty light. I want to keep it kind of just tips and tricks and sharing and very interactive. You have me, I'll be giving a couple of tips, and then Jody, Jocelyn has also volunteered, but there's always time for all of you to also share your magic. After that, we will have open discussion per usual, where you can just bring up anything and everything. There should be at least 15-ish minutes for that, if not more. And then there's a couple other of just housekeeping slides and info to let you know of like all the other fun stuff that's going on. Sounds good? All right. So if I can get to my next slide. I decided to rack my brain and try to find some tips that I have not ever shared or usually haven't shared in a while, whether you've seen me in various skill events or at Summit or skills exchange, any of that. I kind of went through everything and was like, okay, what haven't I talked about? What's some new, fresh tips just for the WUG? And I kind of categorized it in a couple of different areas, starting with adoption. So, the biggest thing that people usually come to me and ask besides reporting is, how do I get people to use Workfront? How do I keep them in? You have so many users. You always say adoption isn't an issue. Like, how do we make that happen? And a couple of tips for that is, one, just removing any of the elements that you don't use in your layout template and access levels. So the big one that I always point out is take documents off of your main menu, right? Like, if you've never clicked it and you still have it, click it. It will take you to a place that you probably didn't even realize exists in Workfront, which is the document section of yourself. And I don't know about you, but I don't want people adding anything in their own personal profile, nor do I want them making personal tasks. That's a story for a different day. But exactly as Kirsten said, less is more. So the less things that they can click on and make a mistake, the more enabled they're going to feel, the more empowered they're going to feel. I always tell them, like, hey, you don't have the ability to delete unless it is a document or a comment, right? They can't go in and just delete a task or delete a project or a program or anything like that. And that makes them feel a little bit more empowered to actually just click the button and see what it does when they know that it's basically foolproof, dummy proof, etc. proof. And then also when you're training, give them one method to do it, right? Like, everybody knows, especially like proof or uploading documents or even making a project, there are 20 different ways that you can do each of those things. You don't have to teach all 20. you don't even have to teach two. Typically, I will teach one. Occasionally, someone will say, but I do it this way. And I'm like, that's perfectly fine. If it gets you there, keep doing it. But I typically try to just train in one swoop, one workflow of here's how it goes. And that yields a little bit more better results, because at least when they go back to watch the recording, it's the same thing every time. And then also when I am setting up dashboards or even like pins, I do it in the order of their workflow. So if you are someone that submits requests, the first pin that I want you to see is requests. And then maybe it's a dashboard that tells them about the different things that they've requested. And then at the top is usually like a report of like new requests that haven't been processed yet, and then in progress, and then completed, right? So as you're moving down, you kind of have different information that is still in the order of your workflow, but it makes sense. And it also helps people to remember to scroll, because I can't tell you how many beautiful dashboards I have made just to find out that no one scrolled past the first one because they're asking me a question and I'm like, it's there. And then, you scroll for them. They're like, oh, I didn't even realize. Like, so again, less is more. And then also just host some regular sessions with your users, whether it's training them on something or just saying, hey, let me watch you work, which not as creepy as it sounds, but you learn a lot just seeing people kind of click around and, where they're going. If it's taking them 10 to 20 clicks, it probably is not set up with what they need to do, or they might need some training, or maybe they need a new dashboard or a pen or whatever it might be. But that's usually where you can find some areas of improvement. And then, also have sessions where you just let them complain. I've gotten so many good ideas out of people just being like, oh, I wish that there was a button that did this, or why can't Workfront do that? And sometimes the answer is like, yes, you can. We just didn't turn it on, or like, here it is. Let me introduce you to this new feature. Or it could be something where I'm like, oh, that was an oversight on my part. Hold on, let me build your report for that. And then I introduce it to them and all their problems are saved. Or it might be a fusion thing. The next kind of set of tips that I have is on project management. So typically, if you're using Workfront, you're using it to manage your projects in your workflow. You've got people in. Now you're going to let them actually use it. And a couple of tips there is to, make some views, whether it's program views, project views, task views, that allows your folks to kind of see the different project health, or just be able to see different areas of Workfront depending on what's going on. So for me, I have one that gives all of the dates, right? It's all your task, and then it's your start date, your end date, the plan completion, the plan start, etc. They can fill it in if it's blank, but it's an easy way just to kind of say, here's all the dates, and then they can change the view for here's the assignments and who's all assigned to it. And it's very clear, usually only like 5 or 6 columns, but it gives them kind of a clean way to see chunks of information and be able to process it. And I actually have numbers on there where it's like view 1, view 2, view 3, view 4. There's also words with it, like monitoring or assignments, scheduling, whatever it might be. But that allows people, one, it's going to show it in order. And that also remembers, it's a lot easier to remember, like, oh, I want to look at view 2 instead of standard. Cross project predecessors, that's come up a lot in a lot of meetings I've been in. So I was like, I would be remiss not to talk about it with this group. I create schedule projects, and then we also have deliverable projects that point to those dates. So my schedule projects, super simple. The owner is usually like the program owner, or sometimes there's no owner at all because no one's actually using it, but it has a couple tasks, typically like 5. It aligns to our milestones. So whether it is launch dates or kickoffs or whatever those key dates are, and that drives all of our deliverables. So you don't have to just have predecessors within your project. Task 2 starts when task 1 ends. You can actually say task 2 of the photo project starts when task 1 of the copywriting project ends, or your schedule project milestone 2 ends, or whatever that might be. And it's an easy way to kind of keep dates clean and projects that go together, updated without you having to touch hundreds of projects. And in my use case, it is literal hundreds sometimes, depending on how big a campaign can be. And then last but not least for project management is data hygiene. So you might have heard me talk about exception reports. Basically, it's a report where I say, like, this field is blank, right? And it might be, for me, brand is a big deal. If we're not reporting on brand, and it's like, where did this even go? But we can say the brand field is blank, and I will give all of the projects where it's not filled in. People can inline edit, fill that in, but it's also super helpful for project managers to easily see all the projects that I own that are open, or maybe it's the ones that are recently completed. We didn't fill out these key fields, and if we don't fill them out, Monique's going to yell at us because none of the reports are going to match. And the beauty of those reports is if it's filled in, it'll disappear. So everyone knows if something's showing up here, that means something is wrong. I also do the due diligence of highlighting the fields that should be filled in so then they can see a very glaring blue box. It's not red anymore because people thought that red was yelling at them. So we changed it to blues and yellows, a little bit calmer, still gets the same point across, and they can inline edit them. Moving on. So for the admins and actually adminning, I've said this 100 times. I'm going to say it again. This is probably the one tip that I am repeating over and over. Use Workfront as a user because it will unlock so much. And I mean, create a queue for yourself, have project templates, have a program, like set it up for your workflow and all the things that you're doing in there. Not only is it going to just kind of show you how people are using Workfront, you're going to identify like, oh, I can't even figure out what to do for me next month. That means other people probably can't. So there's probably a report out there that your folks are going to need. Or, it could be something like you're trying to drum up somebody else on your team or kind of prove your head count or get a promotion, whatever it might be. You can also use that data of like, here's what I do, here's what I'm supporting. Or in my case, here are the other things that I am not quite getting to. Also pay attention to the release schedule and test those things in preview, but also make a note of what is and what isn't kind of imperative to your instance. So there are some things where if you turned it on or left it turned on, it's going to completely rock your world. You want to be ahead of that. In case anybody doesn't know, there's a new requests area that is launching, that is coming with the October 16th, I think, release date. So if you haven't looked at that, go check out preview for all the admins out there. For the non-admins, ask your admin, like, hey, are you aware of what's coming on with the release schedule and the new releases? Is there anything that we should know about, be concerned with, be excited for, and just kind of stay in front of those? And then last but not least, my tip for admins is to create a schedule for all of your system audits and routine maintenance, and better yet, put it in Workfront, right? Have tasks where you're reviewing your templates every 6 months or every year, depending on what your cadence is. You're reviewing user licenses. I do it monthly. I also have some reports that go with that where they are sent to my inbox on that cadence. So not only do I have the task to remind me of like, hey, Monique, this is due, I also have that report showing up in my inbox where I'm like, okay, I really need to look at users and clean that up and just stay ahead of it. And then my last group of tips is for automation and integration. That's always a hot button one. So I had to give something for that. And you want to identify any duplicate efforts out there. So my first like Fusion automation was literally, people were complaining, why do I always have to fill in the date on this field? Like, can't Workfront just know that when I mark this task complete, that date should go there? And I was like, I wish it could. And then I thought about it and I was like, wait, no, we can do that with Fusion. So literally was just, when this task is marked done, take the noun date, drop it in this custom field. Super small, but made such an impact on the team because one, they kept forgetting to do it. Two, it was just extra clicks and time. And it might sound like it's only like a 30-second thing, but when you have 10 people doing it, 20 times a day, you start doing the math and you realize like, nope, that is a little bit of a time suck. And then you can kind of start growing from there, just cleaning up all the duplicative efforts, giving people back some time. Then it's like, okay, what else can we automate? What else can we do? But you want to ensure that that process works manually with no exceptions. And if there are exceptions, you want to make sure that you can say them very much in like a bite-sized sentence, because again, you're telling a robot what to do. So if it's like, oh, but sometimes if it's assigned to Sarah, we do it this way, but if it's Becca, we do it, then it's like, no, that's not automatable. You're not going to have a good time. It's not going to work. But if it's always like, we always do this, then we do this, then we do that, Fusion's your best friend. And when you are in Fusion, use the notes area. I made a joke at an event that like, if I open a Fusion scenario and there's no notes, I get scared. That is true. Use the notes area to kind of put any key details right there in your scenario. And especially if things are hard coded, like passwords or IDs, especially if that ID belongs to a person or a team, and then that swaps out. So then that way you have it right there and you don't have to look up and be like, which ID was this? Which person was that? But then I also have separate documentation that goes through the full scenario that's typically saved in Workfront in my control project. Also in Workfront, use your custom forms and fields to trigger and monitor your Fusion runs. And by that, I mean, you could have, when someone marks ready for Fusion, yes, then it runs. Or, if Fusion starts going awry or something's crazy, it's a lot easier and faster to go to your Workfront project and just, turn the task to complete, or, don't run or change a field, than to try to go into Fusion and turn it off, find the right one, especially if you have a bunch of ones that are connected. So I highly recommend pairing Workfront projects and control projects and documentation with your Fusion scenarios for a little bit of harmony. So those are my tips, no matter where you are in your Workfront journey or what your role may be. Hopefully at least one of them resonates, but I am going to stop talking and turn things over to Jody.
Thanks for that, Monique. I just wanted to say I use cross-project predecessors all the time, and I love the idea of scheduling time to complain. I often find that my biggest complainers are when I say to them, okay, let's walk through this and let me see what I can do to help you. I kind of get crickets. I never get anything specific, but does anyone else have any comments or questions for Monique before I start?
Yeah. Jocelyn, I can see your lips moving, but it seems like you're on mute. You're not on mute on the screen, but we couldn't hear
you. Jocelyn sometimes has audio issues.
I've been there.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the issues, a couple of times while Monique was talking, my computer froze up. So apologies in advance if it seems to go back pretty quickly, but I'm also going to be sharing, which might be an issue. Jocelyn, did you want to say something before I start? No. Okay.
No worries. Whenever you do, you can just interrupt us.
All right, let's go ahead, and I'm gonna share my screen. So, my first tip is setting up your task widget on your homepage. I'm going to shift. Is it sharing?
Yep.
Okay. Like I said, I'm going to share my home screen, but there's on page 9 and 10, there's the documentation that you can reference in the deck that Monique will be sending out afterwards. So I actually realized as I was putting my tips and tricks together that Some of them are very Workfront specific, but many of them are also just kind of general project management tips. So some you may already know, but please feel free to jump in with any thoughts and any questions. So the first thing I do on my homepage is I set my task widgets to specific fields showing, and I encourage other team members to do the same. The last time I did this, I had one team member call it life-changing. Let's see. So the columns I like to set my tasks at include the project name, the task name, if it's ready to start, who it's assigned to, the start on date, and the due on date. And I sort it by due on date so that I can see the most recent upcoming project. I think someone is typing in the background. If you can mute yourself. Sorry, Monique, that was probably you. So as I was saying, yes, due on is where I sort it so that I can see what is most upcoming and ignore my late task over here. One thing I wish that it did was to either like put late tasks in red and then highlight when something is ready. But unfortunately that functionality doesn't exist. The other thing I like to do is group it by planned completion date so that you can see what is upcoming. And you've got it grouped so it's just not this huge group by week. So it's just not this huge list of projects and tasks that you see. So just real quickly, and again, some of you may know this, these are the columns that I use, and that's how you get to them. And this is the grouping, due date by week. And then the other thing that some people like to do is to filter on can start so that you always see what is true. But I often find that I want to see all the upcoming tasks. So probably why I'm hoping that they add functionality to kind of highlight it. So these are the settings that work best for me and my team, but you can certainly set it to whatever works for you. But now if you didn't know before that your homepage is customizable, you do now. So, all right. Moving back to the presentation. So tip number 2 is project tracking. Always use updates to track changes and tag team members in all updates and tag people on anything on docs, particularly on proofs. Any changes to the project, any additional or clarified instructions, changes to task due dates or assignments if additional tasks are needed. The other thing that I do is I will upload emails to a documents folder because as often as we like to ask and encourage people to always use the project for updates, let's face it, we know that they don't always. So, but I will often, so sometimes you get emails that are related to a project, and I will just save those and put them into the project. Also, sometimes I need a quick answer, and rather than tagging somebody in a comment, I'll sort of do the reverse, send a message on Teams, and then screenshot the Teams message and put it into an update in the project. So one of the most recent things that I am trying to remember to do is to record kickoffs, meetings related to the project, and attach that transcript to the project for reference. You can also run it through AI to summarize it for you and attach that. I will absolutely confess that I sometimes use that to go back and confirm what someone has said, especially when there's a disagreement. I recommend that you subscribe to your projects. And if you don't know where that is, it's your three little dots, and you just click on subscribe. This way you'll be notified of any changes that you're not tagged on a comment for. Other thing that I would recommend is, if you don't already have any kind of a unique ID system, to use the Workfront reference number as your unique ID. Every project, and I believe every task, has a unique ID. On our end, we have a customized form number, but when I don't need that for a project, I will use a Workfront reference number. I don't know about you, but so many of our projects' names sound alike, so having a unique ID for each project is incredibly helpful. All right, topic number 3, custom project templates. So definitely recommend using them, but use them judiciously. I try to group similar assets together and similar timelines types as you can. If you're anything like our team is, frequently making tweaks to our templates. It's a lot of continuous improvement. Sometimes it's a process change or a change to the task or duration or predecessor. And you'll find it much easier if you only have like 3 or 4 templates to go make those changes on, rather than 10 or 12 templates. For instance, I have one template for long form assets, things like brochures, reports, guides, and then another template for short form assets such as flyers. And of course, you'll need separate templates for to minimize where you have to change things. Will save you time and frustration in the long run. So definitely start with high level and relatively simple templates. Remember that you can always customize your template for individual projects during kickoff or throughout the course of the project. I know I just said keep it high level and simple, but when in doubt, include the task. It's much easier and quicker to remove a task from an individual project than it is to add one in. I will often put, like, if needed, in parentheses on certain tasks. Plus, it may prompt you to ask a question about something in particular that may or may not be needed for the project. We use an overall project intake form for all of our projects, so I often find for my team that I support that it's helpful to add tasks to remind me of things that are specific to my projects, but not included or don't need to be tracked on the intake form. For example, I have a task assigned to myself to confirm distribution and who the subject matter experts and BP reviewers are. I'll just delete these tasks if they don't apply to a project, but ultimately my advice is to be thoughtful about what you think makes sense to include in your custom templates. And don't worry about your template being perfect. You will always be making continuous improvements to your templates as you learn what works best for you. So let's see, I work very closely with my production teams on task names and duration. And when they want to combine tasks together, in my opinion, it is ultimately the copywriters and designers who will be doing the work. So I want to ensure that I've set up the template to help them do their job more efficiently and effectively. Don't be afraid to make changes as needed, and even consider doing regular audits of your templates to ensure that they're still meeting your needs. They are meant to be customized and evolved with your needs. That is probably something I should do more often. Okay, a couple of, as I say, various and sundry. Where did my Workfront go? Sorry, you guys can see my dog now. If you're not aware, up here is where you can pin pages. I personally use mine for reports that I use frequently. I've got our PTO report so I can see who's out. I've got also our workload balancer so that I can easily manage capacity. Let's see, another great thing is your favorites tab up here. The little star will point out anything that you use frequently, projects, reports, dashboards. I think my screen might be frozen because I can't scroll down further. But there's a whole slew of things you can, favorite templates, you can favorite dashboards. And the other thing that I frequently use and recently just discovered is the recents. I will use this. It will show all of your recent projects that you just did, that tasks, templates, documents, portfolios, programs, and dashboards. So let me go back to the screen. I think that's it for me. Does anyone have any questions or comments that they'd like to throw in? All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Monique, if you want to hand it over to Jocelyn, and hopefully she can share.
Yeah, Jocelyn, do you have, are you doing a screen share or are you just speaking?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Whoa, awesome. Okay. So the share screen option showed up for, oh, there it is. Okay, I've got it.
I don't know if you had heard me. I asked if you were sharing your screen or if you were just speaking.
I was trying to do both, apparently, Monique. So, yeah.
Take the floor.
Okay. So, I will just say I don't know if the tips and tricks I'm going to share are really basic or not. So just take them or leave them however you think. But I did set up a fake project just so you all can see, because I was looking at my screens this morning. I was like, oh, I don't think I have good examples here. So, and I don't have any slides, but I'm only showing two things. One is it's a report, but I don't even think of it as a report, but it's tasks due today or overdue. It's one of the things I look at every single morning to see if one, maybe I'm behind it on a task, but also if others are behind, I'll ask them about it in our stand-ups that we have, 3 times a week, or contact them another way. So let me just share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay. Cool. Tab, window. Sorry if you hear me talking to myself. Let's see. You see just one screen at the top says marketing support, tasks due today or overdue tasks. Is that what you see?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'm not going to call out Jody that she's overdue on a task because it's just a fake project. So that's okay. But so again, this is a report I look at every day. I will say this is one I use. Some of the project managers on my team use another report about tasks. And I don't know, Jody, if that's worth talking about in a future session, but this is one I really like to use because it's, I guess, basic. It doesn't take a lot of brain power, and I can do it first thing in the morning and decide, do I need to take action? So all it really is all of the tasks that are either overdue, where you can see the due on date over here, or they're due today. I tend not to look at ones due today as much as the ones overdue, except to say, is there anything I'm worried about getting done today that shows due today? But you can see here, I have this fake project, example project for tips and tricks, and I am behind on a task due on the 23rd, and Jody is due on a task to set up a kickoff meeting. So again, in this type of instance, I'm looking at this each morning and saying, oh, what do I have that's overdue? Is there a reason for it? Or should I just go in and say, oh, it's okay that this is late. Let me just go in and make it due today. And so it's an easy place to know what's overdue and even make a decision. Is it okay? Honestly, I will add, no matter if it's okay or not, I will go in and make sure the project reflects actual. I don't think it's useful personally to have things overdue because they were supposed to get done then, but they actually didn't. But that's my preference. But so I'd go in here and change it and say, okay, no, that's okay. And then you can see it updated this task that was dependent on it. There's another project manager on my team. She had something due yesterday, but it's not something I'm worried about because it's just the final task in a project to check that the final assets and documents, and she can close out the project. That's the type of stuff you can look at and say, oh, it's okay that it's overdue. If she doesn't do it for a few days, maybe she just hasn't seen it, and I'll let her know to close out her project. Oh, and there's one more. I have someone on my team, my writer, Maria, needs to hand off a script to our videographer for filming. So I know this one isn't tight on a deadline, so it might be okay, but I might just nudge her and say, hey, did you forget to do that? Although, you tend to know your people and whether they're looking at their tasks regularly or not. So someone like Maria is always looking at her tasks and she might just, not have gotten to it yet. So that was my first tips and tricks. And I will say, like, if you want to know how to set up this report, I don't know, Jody and Monique, maybe folks can let you know, and then I can get the report, like how it was built and, all of that stuff for it. If people find that they want a report that's like this.
Yeah, if
Sure.
you don't mind
Okay.
sharing anything you want to include, just send it over and we'll put it in the slide back before we send it out.
Okay.
Yeah. Jocelyn,
Okay.
I often find sometimes that people will actually do the task and then forget to mark it off. So that's certainly not unheard of.
Yeah. There's that too.
Yeah.
Although, how does somebody not feel that like great feeling when they mark a task complete? Like that's the
Right.
goal of my day most of the time. So,
Right. I
yeah,
I keep little check boxes next to my to-do list so that I can actually mark it off.
exactly.
Sometimes I do something and then I put it on my to-do list just to make me feel better so that I
I
can
do the
mark it.
same.
Ah.
Yep.
Oh, by the way,
Um,
if you guys have not figured it out already, Jocelyn and I work together. She's actually my manager. So
yes, and Jody does an amazing job. And my second tip is contouring. I find the word contouring weird because I always think of body contouring, but that's not what this is, although that's the word Workfront has said that they use for this. So what it means is you're adjusting. So I'll show you. It means you're adjusting the even spread of hours for a task into something that's not evenly spread. So I've set up this example. So here is my resource management screen. This is also a screen I look at all the time. You just find well, in our view, we've set it to show red if someone's over their set capacity for a day. And you could see for next week, this is next week, Monday the 29th. These are writers and designers and project managers that I'm regularly working with. And I like to see, hey, does it look like they've got overages? And I say, oh my gosh, Maria, on Monday, it's Friday, but it looks like she's got too much work on Monday. What's going on? I'll expand and see that she's got all of these things going on Monday. And there's just one project, which is my example project, but it's set to be 3 days for 9 hours, and it evenly spread each of the hours, or, obviously 9 divided by 3 hours per day. But Tuesday and Wednesday, she looks better. She's not perfect. We set our max to 6.5 hours because we know people have meetings. So anything over that will show red. But I will go in here. You just double click on it, and I'll change this to 1 hour. Let's see. But I know that my total should be 9. That's what Maria has told me it'll take to do this task. And I'll have to add then 2 hours to the other days. Let's see if I can add. Then I would say this one would be 4.5. I'll add, whoops, an hour and a half there. Oops, if I could type 4.5. And then, so that's 5.5, and I'll make this 3.5. And then the one thing to note is you have to check the little check mark to save it. You can't just click out of it, and that's what'll save it. So you can see now she's red on this day, but it's right at the max, so I feel okay about it. And I know she's at capacity for the first 3 days next week for the most part, because it's, you know, almost the total of 6.5 for each of the days, except definitely at 6.5 for the 4th day. So this is what I do. I'm like, you know, I don't think I should set the start date out farther. You know, she has a little time to maybe get to it on Monday, but it doesn't stress me out that she's got you know, certain days that are over, because she'll get the work done over the course of that time frame. I'll say I usually try to tell people I've done this, to say, hey, I know you're fairly booked on Monday. I'm leaving a little bit of time for you to work on it on Monday and giving you more on Tuesday, because when the users or the workers are doing it, they don't see this view. They don't know that they've gotten this different spread. So I'd like to talk to them about it. And yeah, that was it. That was my 2 tips and tricks. Hopefully they're helpful, but I totally understand if they were basic. So I'll hand it back over to you, Monique and Jody.
Yeah,
So Jocelyn,
you're selling
Yeah.
yourself short on that one, because that is not
Oh.
too basic. Like those are great tips.
Oh, awesome.
it's funny, Jocelyn, how I do the same thing, but I do it like slightly different than you do. So it's funny how that kind of works, and not to get too far ahead and usurp Monique, but our next session in November 21st, I believe, will be asking you guys to share your reports, and that was one of the reports I was going to walk through and cover. And also just want to say, Todd, I saw your question, and I've actually had a couple of other Workfront users reach out to me about, you know, exactly how I use it. So I was going to schedule some time with them. I can throw my email address in here, and you can reach out to me, and I'll include you in that scheduling if you'd like to see that. So just let me know.
Yeah. So,
over to you, Monique.
Thank you. A lot of good chat going on in the chat, and we can definitely make a session on workload balancer, capacity planning. Brittany, we might even be able to include just project management in general, and just have like maybe 2 experts, give each one of them like 20 minutes. But yeah, I think we can definitely make that happen for Q1. So stay tuned on that. But I will look at our list of folks that from Adobe that are willing to talk, as well as maybe call in a couple of favors and just get some good folks on the line that can really go over all good things project management. But speaking of tips and tricks, and I believe Prasanna had a fusion question, but now's the time that we kind of just turn it over to all of you, whether there's a tip that you want to share, a favorite time-saving hack, a challenge that's plaguing you that somebody else can give a tip, or just, you know, general questions. Floor is yours. So I will let Prasanna go first with your fusion question. If you still want to ask that, let me know if you have any trouble coming off of mute, or if you want to put it in the chat and I can just read it for you. Oh, I see it. So how to get the issue path in Workfront Fusion for the read record module. Little tricky, trying to think how to answer it without going full on into a fusion session, but I would say your best bet is when you're making your fusion scenarios, and I know Kirsten just jumped off, but if there's any other fusion experts on the line, feel free to interrupt me at any point. But your best bet is when you're doing your fusion scenarios, I always map directly like what it is that I'm looking for. I do not use queue topic in topic groups. So if you have those I am not the expert to help you with how to really hone in, but you can use that. If it's one specific queue, you could use your issue ID. But if it is like a form that's being used on mini, then you could use like category ID and try to get to it that way. But I would say your best bet is to really like try to hone in with your issue ID for either your topic, or topic group, or the project itself. But that's also a great question to ask in community, because there are a ton of folks. There's a couple of champions that come to mind that I can tag that can help with that. So if you haven't made a post in community, do it, tag me on there, and I will gladly workshop it with some other people to get you a better answer.
Yeah, I have tagged in the, I've raised this.
Oh, wait, you cut out. Yeah, you had started talking and it cut out, so I didn't hear your whole reply.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I had posted the same question in the communities, but yet to receive any like any response for that.
Okay. Yeah. If you know the link, drop it in the chat, and I will give it to the champions on Slack and say like, "Hey, Kurt, can you help with this?" Yeah. Does anybody else have any tips or questions or anything that they want to share today? All right. Well, I will keep going with the slides. If you think of something, you can cut me off. We still have like 9 minutes, so a little bit of time. But speaking of community, there was a question that I asked last week or week before that was all about just things that have really unlocked in your journey. There's a lot of good tips in there as well. I talked a lot about the assignments reports instead of just using assign to, and that really just blew my mind when I was able to figure that out. And project users, I think Kirsten also added a couple things in there, but there was a lot of gems in that thread. So it doesn't look like it's a clickable link, but trust me, if you click on it, it will take you to the community thread. And as Jody said, we will be sharing we will be sharing these slides afterwards, as well as the recording in an email for anyone that has registered. So be sure to stay connected in our chapter. If you haven't already joined, join. You will get the follow-up email as well as the invite for our upcoming session, which, as Jody said, is November 21st, on another Friday at 11 a.m., where we will be talking all about reports. So if you have a favorite report, which I feel like we all do, feel free to share that. You can email Jody, let her know if you want to actually give like a full little presentation. You don't have to do slides or anything like that, similar to Jocelyn did today. Thank you again, Jocelyn, for being brave and sharing your instance live. That can always be a little scary. But yeah, if anybody else wants to kind of share their favorite reports, reporting tips, or if you have reporting problems or questions, be sure to bring those in November as well. There's a couple other virtual WUG events that are happening. I forget who it was, but Jolene, I know you are, I think, a little further north, but probably not as north as Toronto. But, if you want to also join their kickoff, feel free. You do not have to be in that region to join. Central has a adoption session that's happening next month, which should be pretty exciting as well. There's also a link. So anytime that there's a new event added, you'll be able to see them there. Speaking of events, oh, thank you. I will make sure I post that in the chat after this. Speaking of events, there's also a ton of free events presented by Adobe. So if you're not familiar with the events page on Experience League, please go there. There's so much good stuff. I'm really excited about the Pitch Perfect session that's happening next Tuesday. And then also shameless plug, but October 29th, I am doing an Ask Me Anything with person where we will be talking all about system smarts and strategic starts, which is to basically just maintenance as well as road mapping. So if you are someone that needs help with that calendar and setting up and just tips, ask your questions there, because we will be spending a little over an hour going through and answering it. It is text only, so almost like a Reddit, if you will. Yes, Brittany, I will drop that in before we sign off. I think I might be able to just copy it here. Nope, but I will make sure that I will drop that in before we call it a day. And then a couple other things. Skill Exchange happened last month. Thank you to anyone that attended the Mega WUG. If you have not seen Skill Exchange sessions, they should be up all year, but this link will be available to you to be able to go back, watch them, rewatch, take notes. There's a great one on adoption. There's another one on fusion. There's one on advanced reporting. I can't remember any on like project management. There's a couple on proof, but there's a lot of good ones that were happening this year. Also, if you are someone that's very, an admin or project manager and you've been using Workfront, go ahead and get. Oop, there's the echo. But go ahead and get certified and use that to your advancing your career, put it on your resume, etc. There's some info there, and then there's also
Monique, I wanted to interrupt real quick. If you go to the Adobe Summit, you are actually able to take those Workfront certification tests for free. So,
yes. Yeah, that was something they added this year. Hopefully they're bringing it back next year. I haven't heard one way or the other, but so many people raved about it. I don't see.
And I know
last
year I didn't have the chance to study for it, but I went with a couple of Marketo colleagues, and they just went ahead, took the exam, and passed it. So it's free to try. I'm hoping to do the same thing at the Adobe Summit next April.
Yeah, that's exciting. So, hopefully you pass. Maybe you and Brittany can study together. But yeah, there is all of the certifications are available. There is one for Fusion. I believe it's called like the Workfront Developer Professional and Workfront Developer Expert. So those are the two certifications you want to look for if you want to be Fusion certified. There's also the Experience Maker Awards. Last call is October 17th, so you have a little under a month to get those in. So that's you. There it is, and that is our last slide. And then, as promised, Brittany, I am pulling up that link.
I actually already put it in, Money.
Yeah, I saw that you dropped the one for the WUG, but she was also asking about the Experience Lake, so I want to make sure that we shared that one as well. So, but yeah, look at that, 2 minutes to spare. So not only are we on time, we're a little bit early. I want to thank all of you for participating, asking questions, bringing your tips, tricks. Hopefully all of you learned at least one thing. today. If not, there's always next time. So we try to keep the content kind of varied for anyone and everyone. If there are things that you want to talk about and discuss in the future, please, please, please don't hesitate to let us know. And super looking forward to November when we talk about reporting, and I guess Q1 when we talk about project management. So excited for all of that, and have a beautiful weekend, everybody. Last weekend of September. So hopefully you can enjoy the summer-ish, fall-ish weather before it starts getting too cold. Thanks, everyone.